If you're like me and have done a bunch of research on EV chargers, you may be wondering how come sometimes they're described in amps and sometimes in kilowatts when referring to the speed? Well, that's what I want to talk about today. The difference between amps and kilowatts and how to do a simple calculation to convert the difference between the two. My name's Trevor. I've been a consultant in the EV charging world for a few years now. Along my journey, I've definitely picked up some valuable information, and a lot of this just doesn't seem to be online, or if it is, it's way overcomplicated. So that's my goal here today, is to just simplify this whole thing for you and hopefully give you the information you need to save you time and money. When it comes to EV charging and the speed of the charger, first we'd probably have to say, the higher the output of kilowatts that are coming out of the charger, the faster the car will charge. Now, some cars charge at different speeds, at different rates, but I'll get into that a little bit later. But first, I wanted to talk about the 80% rule. Actually, there's two 80% rules in the world of EV charging. The first has to do with the battery. So it's always advised that you don't want to charge your EV past 80%. I mean, it's not the end of the world if you do, but you don't want to do it on a regular basis. These lithium batteries, they don't like being charged to full capacity. So if you keep pushing it up to the 95, the 100 range, every time you charge, then it'll just decrease the longevity or the lifespan of your battery. That's the first 80% rule. The second 80% rule, which applies more to what we'll be talking about today, is when it comes to the electrical system or the amp load. This gets a little bit technical, and remember, I'm not an electrician, so I'm just going to simplify this as much as possible. But basically, when it comes to amps, you don't want to exceed 80%. So as you can imagine, if you have an electrical system and you load it all up to 100%, you have tons of chargers and everybody's got their lights on and everybody's got their phones plugged in and it's running at 100%, you're probably going to short circuit the system and all the lights will turn off. Kind of similar to when you're using your blow dryer and the lights shut off. It's kind of a similar concept. In respect to EV chargers, you may have seen online, or maybe a consultant has provided you a spec sheet. The chargers are usually listed with an amperage beside them. So, sometimes it'll be 40 amp, 60 amp, 80 amp. This is related to the capacity of the charger and ultimately, the output of the charger. Let's use 40 as an example. You can't use that whole 100%. As I said before, it has a potential or the increased risk of, shorting out your system. You can only use 80% of that. So 80% of that 40, that's 32. And then how do you figure out the kilowatts? Usually in commercial settings or high-rise residential buildings like strata buildings, especially here in Vancouver, you're almost always using 208 volt. Again, you're going to need to check with your electrician, but in commercial buildings, it's almost always 208. Residential houses will be 240. But in my experience, I almost always use 208. Okay, so what you do for your calculation to convert it from amps to kilowatts is first you take your 40 amps, and again, we can't use all that. We can only use 80% of that. So that then turns into 32, which is the 80%. You take that 32 amps and you times it by your voltage, which in most cases is 208. So 32 times 208 is 6,656. Don't worry, I have it written down. I didn't just do that in my head. Now bear with me, it's a big number, but really you only just need those first two digits there. That's your watts. So 6656 is your watts. You're going to divide that by 1,000 and that's your kilowatts. So with a 40 amp charger, your output in kilowatts would be 6.6. Now, that's not the fastest charger. It's probably mid-range in the chargers that you'll find out there. But I mean, anything over 5 kilowatts will get the job done. It won't be the fastest charge. You won't have the happiest customer, or if you're the driver, you won't be jumping for joy when you see it's only 6.6 kilowatts. Ideally, you'd like to have maybe an 80 amp charger or a 60 amp charger, get those speeds up to closer to 10. But it's not really what you want, it's what your building can support. It really comes down to the amount of capacity of power you have in the building. I hope that wasn't too technical. I hope I didn't get into the weeds too much on that one. If you're interested or you want more of a visual version of this and see the calculations all broken down with a few examples, feel free to check out the website. It's strongenergy-ev.com. There's a lot more information on there, and it's all provided with pictures and examples. So if you're interested, feel free to go check that out. And really appreciate you guys tuning in again. There's going to be a lot more coming. So catch you on the next one. Thanks.